Man, oh man, a whole lot of hype going into this game. Fear, emotion, excitement. I thought a lot of that was in the locker room. No. No. It is on the internet. It permeates the entire fan base. The biggest opportunity, I think, for the team, but also for the players. I think there's a lot to be gained and a lot to be lost. A lot of opportunity. Win or lose, this game's going to carry a lot of meaning. You cannot say that about a Panthers game. Really, in the past few seasons, there's been spots, there's been moments, not like this. This is a huge opportunity for players to make a name for themselves. I think there's players that have a lot to lose. I think there's guys that you're talking about. Saturday might be where rubber meets the road for a couple of players. Huge opportunities. And I think the owner gets that. I think Tepper understands the weight of this moment. I think Canales had a minute in his press conference on Thursday where he talked about seeing the flags. Because that's what it is. You go outside and you see the emotion. You see people waving their Panthers flags, wearing their gear. A broker shows up to the golf course at 2 p.m. He chooses to put on the Panthers visor. It's those small little micro choices, and I think it's adding to the weight of this game. But I think there's so much at stake, so many opportunities. For me, the first thing is just, how does this team look? How do they come out? And they're young, they're inexperienced. At times, it's really bit you in the ass. It's almost like young prodigies this team has, really. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get a crying infant, helpless, or you're going to get a prodigy, someone who's capable of great, amazing things. How does Canales have his team looking? Are they fired up, but are they running a tight operation? Because I think on the other side of the field, the Rams, it's a well-oiled machine. Veteran quarterback, Sean McVay, he's been around the block. Stafford, there's gray in that beard. They've been around the block. Canales, he's got a bunch of, they're not even 20-somethings. They're in their lower 20s. And can you trust Lathan Ransom to not get an unnecessary roughness call? Can you avoid a taunting call like Mike Jackson had against the Bucs last week that was a pretty big penalty and set the Bucs up in scoring position? Here's Dave Canales on the moment going into Saturday.
Message really for me, talking to the guys, like, it is special, and it's important that we recognize that, we lean into it, and we feed off of that energy. That's all right. That's all a part of it. At the same time, we got to keep our head about us, and we have to make sure we execute on the most fundamental parts of it. Because as you can imagine, if you get too excited and caught up in the moment, then you can sacrifice technique. You can sacrifice like the most basic parts, and sometimes you'll go too far, and that's not what I want either. I want everything they got within the whistles.
I can't tell if Dave Canales is describing puberty or his expectations on the field Saturday. You don't know what you're going to get from a bunch of teenage boys. You have no idea in a locker room. And it really is that simple. I think that's a good analogy. Like, you have a bunch of young, fiery men. You're going against the well-oiled machine, the Los Angeles Rams. What are you going to get out of these guys? And are they going to be ready to go? Is it going to be buttoned up? Or is it going to be too feisty and you're going to jump routes and be too aggressive? And this balance to me is so important because I think another huge name, J.C. Horn. I almost put Derek Brown here, and I didn't. I think J.C. Horn has a huge opportunity. I didn't put Derek Brown just because I think the cornerback, honestly, I think Derek Brown's the MVP of the team this year. I've said it multiple times. I think Derek Brown could literally have 3 sacks and still not be talked about. It honestly is really sad. And that's why I put J.C. Horn. I think in terms of guys that can make a name for themselves, guys that command respect, I think J.C. Horn is a top corner in football. I don't think that's well regarded across the league. I think there's guys that have greater name recognition and brand reputation playing for bigger markets, bigger teams, bigger markets, bigger names. I think those guys exist. If J.C. Horn goes out there and has 2 turnovers on Stafford, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And I think Stafford looks at week 13. He said it right after the game. It was a fluke. It was a fluke. Derek Brown stuck his hand up. That's how Nick Scott got that interception. Mike Jackson jumped the route. I don't normally make throws like that, says Stafford. I normally hold on to the ball. Derek Brown's not going to strip it. J.C. Horn is going to be playing in this game. He didn't play in week 13. Stafford doesn't care. He thinks he's better than what he left on the field in week 13. Here's Matt Stafford.
I mean, I'd like not to throw it to their team. I think that was the story of the game when you think about it. I mean, we moved the ball well in some areas, scored a couple, in the red zone, did some nice things, ran it well, and just had the turnovers. And really, you look at their defense, that's what they've been able to do to a lot of teams. Whether it's getting a tip at the line of scrimmage and somebody making a play on it, or somebody in the back end making a play, or stripping the ball. So they're an opportunistic group with a bunch of playmakers. Why is Matt Stafford using the best term I've heard of anyone in media to describe the Panthers? Opportunistic. Opportunistic. This is like the raccoon that is in the street and the deer is on the ground, and it's sitting there for the taking. They're not the big lion. They're not the super talented, the superstar studded star quarterback drives a Bentley team. That's not who they are. They're not the cool kid at the lunch table. That's not the Panthers. They're opportunistic. They take what's there. And they're going to need to take what's there. That is a key to this game. They're going to need to do it. Whether it's pressure from a young guy like Nick Scorton. I think beside J.C. Horn, Scorton, and Derek Brown, these are respect games. Playoffs. You go out there and have a really good game, a strip sack, or a few sacks. I still think interceptions carry more weight. I think it's more pizzazz. If people care less about the football, what happens between the tackles, they like the takeaways. Still, can you get a little pressure on this guy? Can you disrupt his rhythm? Because he thinks Stafford is telling you in that clip, it's a fluke. It's not going to happen again. Turnovers, I don't do that. I'm better than that. That's what Stafford's saying. They need to disrupt this guy's rhythm. They need to do it. They need to get in this guy's face, whether it's tipping balls at the line of scrimmage. I think DB had 2 in the Week 13 game against the Rams. He had the one big one that resulted in the Nick Scott interception. Get the hands up. Get the hands up. Knock the ball down so the playmakers can make plays. And they might get all the credit, but we won't care about that. And here's J.C. Horn one more time on his key to the game.
It's just good to have everybody healthy and everybody back this time around because he's a great quarterback. He did it at a high level for a very long time and got a lot of weapons. So we need everybody back, and we just gotta find a way to take the ball away and do what we did last week. Football is a weird game. You know what I'm saying? The ball bounces certain ways, and you got to execute when you have those opportunities.
Can he capitalize on the opportunity, J.C. Horn? Can he have a big takeaway? He did it against the Jets twice. One of the best games I've ever seen from a defensive back. 2 big interceptions in the fourth quarter against the Jets. Can he do it on the national stage? Can he command respect? And I think for this defensive unit as a whole, Nick Scorton, Derek Brown, J.C. Horn. I wish Trevin Wallace was healthy. I'd include him in this. Maybe Roseboom, you want to put him in that. Morig. This core, are you good enough to go out there and make plays, win with the defense? I know I've been comparing the Panthers extensively to the 2010 Seahawks when they won in the wild card round, upset at 7-9. The Seahawks at 7-9 upset the 11-5 Saints. Huge upset. That was the game with the Beastquake run. Marshawn Lynch, 67-yard touchdown. Dynamite. They won on offense. I think this game for the Panthers, it's going to be a lot of defense. It's going to need to be. I think Stafford can put up 35 points in the blink of an eye. So you got to disrupt his rhythm. And with that comes a huge opportunity for guys like Scorton, for guys like Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, who maybe they play in a smaller market, but clearly they deserve national attention. They deserve to be considered a superstar, much like Luke Kuechly was more than a decade ago now. The stars of the past, Josh Norman, another guy who I think really had that legacy. You could feel it. I'm not saying he's Lawrence Taylor, but you could really feel the national recognition and the fear and the respect that those guys had across the league. And I think Derek Brown and J.C. Horn are there, but because they don't play for the big team with a lot of respect that wins in the playoffs, they're not nearly at that level yet. And I think this game is huge for that. This game is huge. This is a moment to capitalize that, and that's why I've been playing the momentum card all week, which is I'm not going for a Super Bowl. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you a Super Bowl's on the table. I don't believe that. Don't get me wrong. I want it to happen, but do I think that's feasible? Do I think you're lining up in the Super Bowl? Probably not. But this game, it's the wild card round. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. And it's happened in the past. There's all sorts of teams that shouldn't be winning the wild card round winning. It happens seemingly every year. Now, is it going to be an 8-9 team pulling off the upset? I don't know. You're going to need these guys to really play like they have something to gain. And I think that defense does. And I think that defense is going to come out fiery. Hopefully Canales has them ready to go. I want to talk about who has a lot to lose in this game, because I think there are two names that really stand out, but I want to talk about Bryce Young for a minute. So talked about Bryce Young more on Thursday. Definitely watch the video. It's a shorter video. I think for Bryce Young, the stakes are low. He's getting the fifth-year option. The decision's already been made. Joe Person called an easy decision. Talked about that yesterday. So he's secured his short-term future in Carolina. He's secured that. What's at stake? Oh my gosh, if he has a bad game, get ready for the offseason. It is going to be awful. It is going to be absolutely terrible if Bryce Young has a bad game. It is going to be nonstop quarterback questioning. It's going to be a lot of problems and no solutions. Because honestly, I think any replacement plan for quarterback, and we're going to talk a lot more about the options they'll have at quarterback, not just this offseason, but moving forward, it's going to be a lot of people playing ad libs. It's that game, what do they call it? Mad Libs. There's a bunch of blanks on the page. And it's like, blank would be a great quarterback. And you're just going through the list. Like, Greta Thunberg would be a great quarterback for the Panthers. Charlie Sheen would be a great... And people are just like using like random pop culture names. It's going to get that bad if Bryce Young has a bad game. Because everyone's going to overreact. It's going to be awful. And I think we already know the story of this guy. It's like there is fundamental improvements that need to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. He's improved a little bit in the past few seasons. I think the floor has been raised greatly, but I think the ceiling is way too low. And what it's going to take to raise that ceiling, it's going to be a lot. And it's probably going to take more than an off season, but it's going to at least take an off season. And I'm telling you, if he has a bad game, oh man. Not a lot to lose per se financially or anything, and I don't think he has a ton to gain either. In the same breath, I think if he has 5 touchdowns, I don't think Tepper is whipping his shirt off, waving it around like a Panthers towel, while Dan Morgan writes a check in the corner of his office. I don't think that's going to be the pan on the camera that you see if the Panthers win on Saturday. Although I would hope to see it. I would love to see Tepper. He should. Come on. This is how Tepper makes up for throwing the beer on the fan. We need Ryan Fitzpatrick post-game, the Amazon post-game show where Ryan Fitzpatrick rips his shirt off. That's what we need from Tepper on Saturday. If they win. Like, that is I know Cam Newton's going to be at the game. I know there's a bunch of stuff that they're doing. I want to see Tepper shirtless. That would be what would make this game worthwhile. That would be a true win. For this program, that would be a huge win. Okay, let's talk about who has something to lose. Xavier Legette, and we're beating a dead horse. Man, that was like the worst pun ever because he's the horse guy. I didn't even mean to do it, but Xavier Legette, I think he has a lot to lose. I think this might be it for him. I think this might be it. And I think Dave Canales has done a ton to protect him. I think in general, the front office, they have stake in Xavier Legette's success, which I think helps him. It's much like Bryce Young. It's like you've invested a lot in this guy. You used your 32nd overall pick on Xavier Legette. I believe that was part of the Brian Burns trade. So you've given up a lot to get this guy, and you had to trade up to get him in the draft, mind you. They want it to pan out. They also want Jonathan Brooks to pan out, who was a second-round pick from 2024, the same year Legette was drafted. Brooks hasn't played, aside from, I think, one game, or was it two? One game and maybe a couple snaps in another. This was a weird clip I pulled from Jalen Coker of all people's press conference. Jalen Coker wasn't even spoken to about his expanded role in the offense, which really parlays well with what I was talking about on Tuesday, which is I think it's a bunch of bullcrap what Dave Canales is giving you. So here is Jalen Coker on his expanded role.
That you're going to be having a much bigger role. Can you talk to us a little bit about that conversation that you had with how your role will be expanding in this offense?
I wasn't talked to about it personally, but yeah, and that I'm good with that.
So Jalen Coker, of course, he's good with the expanded role in the offense. But here's Dave Canales. So Jalen Coker evidently was never spoken to about his expanded role in the offense. They never sat him down. And wouldn't you think that'd be typical? Like they would at least have a conversation if he was, getting into a larger role in this offense. Well, this is what Canales said earlier this week in a press conference.
Again, this is a celebration of Jalen just continuing to step up into a more starter role in 12 personnel and 11 personnel and those things, just trying to find a way to get him more involved.
So they never had a conversation with him. There's like the weird language about the personnel groupings that they use Coker in. And I think what you have seen with Jalen Coker is you've had a guy that's exceeded expectations literally since he's had his foot in the door here. I think you go all the way back to training camp when he was high pointing the ball in practice. There were a ton of great reports about Coker. Ultimately, he lost momentum. He had this strange hamstring issue that held him back and kept him out of the first few games. I also don't think the team was super high on that hamstring issue. I think maybe there was opportunity they thought that Coker didn't take to stay with the team facilities and correct that and work on the muscle imbalances before training camp started, but that's minutia. Canales has done everything he can to keep Legette on the throne. And slowly but surely, he's really pigeonholed into putting Coker on the field, even though I think he wants Legette to succeed over Coker. But because Coker has been developing this rapport with Bryce Young, which I think is a huge factor, I think he's been better as a downfield receiver, 1,000,000%. Some of those streaks that Bryce Young has hit the ball to Coker on. And if you're Xavier Legette going into this game, you look at Jimmy Horn Jr. sitting on the sideline. Jalen Coker's now the starter, reportedly. T-Mac, we know he's the number one guy. Where does Legette fall into this whole Panthers thing after this season? And I think this game is big for Xavier Legette. Can Xavier Legette go out there and have an 8-catch game? Because I think that really changes momentum going into the offseason. Not saying it saves his job, but I think it's a lot easier if you're Morgan or whoever making decisions and it's the 3rd or 4th round, because I don't think they're going and drafting a receiver in the 1st round. Probably not, after doing it 2 years in a row. But if they're sitting there middle round, day 2, day 3, and there's a receiver available, and they think about that most recent experience, Xavier Legette had an 8-catch game in the playoffs. Oh, we don't need the speedy wide receiver out of TCU. Just making up the school. Now I know who comes from TCU. Jalen Reagor. Oh, geez. Jalen Reagor went to TCU. He was like one of the biggest busts ever at receiver. So maybe Legette is safe. But you catch my drift. This is a huge game for Xavier Legette to really prove his worth and hopefully carve a role out for himself in 2026, because I don't know what happens to him between Jimmy Horn, Jalen Coker, T-Mac, and whatever they do this offseason. Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle is pissed. And he doesn't show a ton of emotion in his press conferences, but I feel like he really feels like he has something to prove. And I think Dowdle wants to go out there and just run over this team. And I think he's motivated by money. Remember, Rico Dowdle is going to be a free agent, and I could care less. I could care less what his motivations are. I think this is a guy that really wants to go out there and just run for 200 yards. I think if he has a really big game and they win, even if they lose, I think if Rico Dowdle has a big game, it's going to be a huge payday. And I don't know if he stays here. I don't know how it fits with Chuba Hubbard making a decent amount of money, $34 million contract, I believe. Probably butchering the amount there, but it's a decent amount. They're not going to go and pay Rico Dowdle a ton, probably, especially with Jonathan Brooks coming back, and they drafted Trevor Etienne in 2025. Rico wants to get paid. He wants to get paid, and here's Rico Dowdle talking about going into the game on Saturday.
10 yards. I know that's something that certainly stings. Just how motivated are you to show what you can truly do, especially on a big stage after a rough finish of the year?
Yeah, great defense we played against last week. Held me under, I think, 29 a game before 10 last week. So, rough outings, it happens. It's the NFL, But like I said, we're on to a new week and got to go prove myself this week and win the playoffs, a big game. So I'm looking forward to it for sure. Definitely motivation to be better than I was last week.
So Rico Dowdle has a ton of motivation in that speech there, talking pretty fast, and he's talking like the tone, kind of. And I feel he's talking to the whole league. I think he's saying, I'm going to go out there and prove that I can do this, and that I deserve to be paid like the number one running back, and that I'm a tone setter, and that you give me a chance. I'm like Marshawn Lynch in 2010. The Seahawks gave Lynch a chance. You give Rico Dowdle a chance, he's going to run the opponent over. And I think this is that type of game for him. I think this game has a ton of weight. He's struggled in recent weeks. He wants to go out there and run the Rams out of Bank of America Stadium. He goes, the grass is green, but money's greener. I'm going to earn it on Saturday. And I am confident that that motivation will help him. I'm telling you, nothing speaks like money in life, especially in football, especially at that position. As we all know, it's a brutal position to play. This is The Tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. So much at stake in this game. So much opportunity, so much to win, so much to lose. I'm pulling for a Panthers win. This is The Tone. I will definitely see you on Monday.